Bucket Think Tank, and today we're going to talk about Detective Comics issue 1000. And honestly, this was alright. Issue 1000 Detective Comics does what Action Comics 1000 did, which is told a bunch of different stories from a bunch of different writers across the Batman universe. Scott Snyder, Kevin Smith, Christopher Priest, Warren Ellis, Brian Michael Bendis, Paul Dini, and these are all, for the most part, really good to, I think, a bit subpar stories, and it was a bit off-putting when I thought about it. It felt that it sort of made a very unique mistake in terms of how one would write a Batman book like this. I mean, this is Detective Comics 1000, so where's the Batman universe? And that was sort of what I realized was the problem. As I did, this is actually my second, well, technically my third recording of this, and I just finished a rather interesting rundown, well, sort of a decent rundown of my favorite stories from there, but I sort of realized they were all sort of the same. They were all just Batman stories, and I think we're all sort of wondering, well, what's the problem with that? It's a Batman book. We should have Batman stories. But the problem is they're all just Batman stories. Compare this to, say, Action Comics 1000, which is actually our only real comparison to this. Action Comics 1000 told stories about Batman, yeah, but you think of stories where there's a moment when a bunch of different people are telling their own stories of Batman. The closest we get to that is The Legend of Newt Brody, which is just a story of a bunch of Batman villains talking about their experiences with the henchman Newt Brody, who's actually just members of the Bat family in disguise. You know, the closer we there's no real interaction with any particular Batman villain. The closest we get is Penguin, but that's not really about Penguin's rivalry with Batman. It's Penguin finding out, or at least revealing to Batman, or Bruce Wayne, that he always knew he was Batman. And those, again, are good stories, but there's not much sort of heart to them. The question is, what does Batman stand for? These are all sort of like really depressing, not really depressing stories, but sort of stories about Batman without talking about Batman. When I think of like the Snyder story, The Longest Case, which is the story of Batman tracing all these steps, all these clues, which lead him to like this detective club, where he's now a member of, which is led by Detective Chimp, Martian Manhunter, Hawkman, Hawkgirl, Ralph Dibny, Sue Dibny, The Question, and Sam Bradley. It's a cool idea, but we just hear that Batman's a detective. There's no real attempt to sort of reveal, hey, we think you're a really good detective because you solved this case. We again, thinking about Action Comics, there's some great stories with Lex Luthor and their back and forth. Action Comics wasn't afraid to like have more fun of sort of the absurdity of Superman over the years. And I don't know. It just feels like we see there's an attempt to show how vast and big the Bat universe is, but we don't try to take advantage of it. There's no story in Arkham Asylum. There's no story from Blackgate. There's no story from the GCPD. There's no moments of the Robins talking about Batman. There's no story of Catwoman. Well, I think we've had enough of Catwoman talking about. There's no story about Two-Face talking about them. Or even Superman. I think sort of the problem is like all these really interesting stories have already been told in Batman stories. I think Action Comics had the advantage of Superman not really getting that much attention compared to Batman. So there was way more room to tell the obvious story. And again, these stories aren't bad. They're just sort of, there should have been other really much stronger, more gut-punching stories as well. But let's talk about what's coming in Detective Comics after this. So the new writer for Detective Comics will be Peter Tomasi. You may remember him from his Batman and Robin book New 52, or his Superman run in Rebirth, which was really great, which is one of the reasons why Bendis is getting flack, not just because his stories are kind of bad, but because he's coming up after Tomasi, who wrote a really great John and Lois and Clark, which really helped amp up Superman as a character. But anyway, Tomasi's story seems to be about, well, the Arkham Knight, and the Arkham Knight seems to be a bit different, though a bit similar to his video game counterpart, if you played the Arkham Knight game. So it looks like the Arkham Knight here is not going to be Jason Todd, thank heavens, but he also seems to be very obsessed and very set on exposing Batman. Where I think the Arkham Knight took Batman down because he hated him, because he was Jason Todd. The Arkham Knight here seems to think Batman is a problem. That, you know, that he's just as bad as the people he brings in, and this isn't a revolutionary idea. But it's a pretty strong idea here. It's because of what we're going to do with the character, the Arkham Knight. Just think of what we can do there. It seems to be like a fusion of Dark Knight Rises' Bane with sort of the mentality of Stephanie Brown in Detective Comics, who, if you recall, she sort of went on a bit of an anti-Batman kick. That, yeah, you do some good, but you've caused way more problems. And he even goes into the fact that, you know, Batman, which to him is like the greatest sin of Batman, is that he sort of indoctrinates children, young people, into the crusade to sort of further his sort of Bat family. He talks about how Batman goes after, you know, the mentally disturbed, the mangled people who only see the way to be heard is to lash out. That Batman sort of picks on these people, whether it's Joker, whether it's Freeze, whether it's Croc. It's sort of an undesirable like Croc or Man-Bat. He doesn't see any difference, nor does he see any difference in terms of offense comparing Poison Ivy to Catwoman, and that he seems to just like to do this because he likes to be the center of attention. And with that, I just sort of can't help but look forward to what's coming next from Detective Comics and Tomasi. But with that in mind, let's bring this video to a close here. If you're new to the Bucket Think Tech, feel free to like, comment, share, subscribe. If you read Detective Comics 1000, I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. Am I exaggerating a bit? Check out some other videos on this channel, and I will catch you all later. This is the Bucket Think Tank signing off. Thanks for watching, and may your fandom serve you well.